Hi, everyone. Welcome to the No Peace, No Quiet podcast. I am your host, Rachel DePalma, and I am the CEO and founder of No Peace, No Quiet. I am also a survivor of domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, workplace harassment, and the target of a social media smear campaign. No Peace, No Quiet's podcasts are for educational purposes to provide information and should not be construed as legal advice. If you would like to schedule a meeting with No Peace, No Quiet, please go to nopeacenoquiet.org, click on the Contact Us form to request a meeting. With that said, let's get into this podcast episode. No Peace, No Quiet Inc. was established on October 26, 2021. We are a non member incorporated in the state of California 501c4 nonprofit organization. Our mission statement: No Peace, No Quiet Inc. is dedicated to creating safe spaces online for victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse. No Peace, No Quiet is a community of survivors helping others survive through lobbying for change by sharing our experiences of abuse and broken legal processes with legislatures and our ideas to improve laws that support victim-focused outcome legislation. In order to have a better understanding of what No Peace, No Quiet does, it's important to understand the difference between grassroots lobbying and traditional lobbying. The difference lies primarily in the source and approach of the advocacy efforts. Grassroots lobbying involves mobilizing and engaging the general public or grassroots supporters to influence legislatures and policymakers. It focuses on building public support and encouraging individuals to contact their elected officials to express their views on a specific issue or legislation. Grassroots lobbying often involves activities such as public awareness campaigns, petitions, letter writing campaigns, phone calls, and public demonstrations. The strength of grassroots lobbying lies in its collective voice and the potential to create a groundswell of public opinion demonstrating widespread support or opposition to a particular cause. Traditional lobbying typically refers to the efforts of professional lobbyists or lobbying organizations that directly engage with policymakers, legislatures, and government officials to influence decision making. Traditional lobbyists are hired or appointed by interest groups, corporations, nonprofit organizations, or other entities to advocate for specific policies or legislation that align with their clients' interests. They often employ strategies such as direct meetings with lawmakers, providing research and analysis, presenting testimony at hearings, and providing campaign contributions to support friendly legislatures. Traditional lobbying relies on expertise, relationships, and influence within the political system to shape policy outcomes. In summary, grassroots lobbying mobilizes public support and encourages individuals to engage directly with policymakers, while traditional lobbying involves professional advocates directly engaging with lawmakers and officials to influence policy decisions. Both forms of lobbying can be effective in shaping public opinion and influencing legislation, but they differ in their approach and the source of influence. Grassroots lobbying emphasizes the power of the people, while traditional lobbying relies on professional representation and expertise. No Peace, No Quiet is a grassroots lobbying organization. Our organization collaborates with the public to drive change in our community by creating petitions and letter writing campaigns to Congress demanding change for victim-focused outcome legislation, as well as support the planning of other community activities. We can help support legislation change by using crowdsourcing techniques to gather information on issues that align with our organization's priorities through third-party services to obtain supporting evidence of needed change through our reporting tools like the Misconduct Ticketing System, or MTS for short. With the Misconduct Ticketing System, we can gather information from victims, survivors, and allies where they can anonymously report harmful content on social media that is contributing to the bias in society against victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse. This includes bias towards marginalized groups such as the LGBTQIA+ community, Indigenous women, women of color, and men who have been silenced on this issue for far too long. Abuse has no boundaries, and it has a major impact on society that ties to other social issues such as racism, gun violence, workplace discrimination, and harassment. Domestic violence and abuse has been linked to mass shootings, where investigations have found the perpetrator has had a history of domestic violence and abuse. The power and control dynamics victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse experience also feeds racism and is the root cause of workplace discrimination and harassment, because these abusive tactics are held up as the gold standard of acceptable behavior in corporate America. No Peace, No Quiet uses the Bill Moyer method to support our grassroots lobbying efforts of activism. Bill Moyer developed the Movement Action Plan, or MAP, in the late 1970s that uses case studies of successful social movements to illustrate 8 distinct stages through a social movement's progress, and is designed to help movement activists choose the most effective tactics and strategies to match their movement's current stage. Bill Moyer's Movement Action Plan defines the roles of activists in social movements into 4 categories: citizen, reformer, rebel, and change agent. No Peace, No Quiet's activities fit into the reformer role. To be an effective activist, the reformer's role is to do the following. Reformers use official mainstream systems and institutions like the courts, legislatures, government agencies, and corporations to get the movement's goals, values, and alternatives adopted into official laws, policies, and conventional wisdom that can help dissolve social bias. Reformers use a variety of means like lobbying, filing lawsuits, collecting data in surveys, organizing rallies, and working with political candidates. Reformers engage with professional opposition organizations, or PPOs, as they are the key to the movement because they can help to identify roadblocks to the success of the movement. POOs ultimately help the grassroots movement. Reformers create watchdog programs that ensure enforcement, expand success, and protect against backlash. No Peace, No Quiet's role as a reformer in the space for victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse is as follows. No Peace, No Quiet reviews new legislation, mostly in the state of California, for domestic violence and abuse victims and provides feedback to the community as well as legislatures, providing ideas on ways to improve the laws to support victim-focused outcome legislation. No Peace, No Quiet lobbies for change by bringing awareness to issues that affect domestic violence and abuse victims. We provide templates for supporters to write to their legislatures, and we create and promote petitions that support our mission and align with our goals. We partner with other organizations to help bring legislative change that support victim-focused outcomes, as well as engage in social activities with professional opposition organizations, or POOs, to gather information on any potential backlash that will create roadblocks on our mission to help support victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse. No Peace, No Quiet's misconduct ticketing system, or MTS, is a watchdog program similar to the ADL's processes, but for domestic violence and abuse victims to report cyber harassment and bullying that is contributing to the bias in society that is controlling the narrative in our court systems, where jury selection typically excludes victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse as qualifying jurors in these types of cases, leading to low conviction rates where 95% of perpetrators walk. These low conviction rates further perpetuate society's bias and feed the false narrative, victims always lie. The statistics do not support these claims, as less than 10% of victims who come forward about their experiences have lied, which means society's bias is punishing the 90% of victims who are telling the truth. Society's bias against victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse are allowing more than 10 million people in the U.S. to be harmed and contributes to almost 17,000 homicides due to domestic violence and abuse each year. The cost of society's bias in the U.S. to the taxpayers is $37 billion annually. I think it's safe to say hate is a very expensive byproduct of allowing bad behaviors to go unprosecuted for decades, which is where lawsuits come into play under the Bill Moyers Action Plan. Lawsuits can change the direction of these bad behaviors and reset society's expectations of what is and is not acceptable behavior. Or it can further push victims down until they take justice into their own hands and become a perpetrator because they were re-victimized by a system that is supposed to protect them, but is always stacked against them. No Peace, No Quiet's misconduct ticketing system reports are aimed to help bring an undeniable visual to legislatures to bring a level of transparency the social media platforms are failing to do. As shown on the chart, Making Change, What Works report, page 36, based on Bill Moyers' work, the reformers' role is to take the reins after the rebels have hit stage 5, and where the reformers come in at stage 6 of the action plan. The problem we are seeing in the movement is the rebels, or the social media performative activists, do not want to let go of the reins because they have become addicted to the attention and admiration they receive in this space, where they get to play the victim and the hero, which is causing victims and survivors of domestic violence and abuse to be perpetually stuck in a cycle of abuse at the hands of people who are supposed to help them. This is why we are seeing a lot of infighting within this movement. If you are going to be an activist, it is important to know what your role is and when you need to let go and pass the reins to the next group of activists. Thank you for tuning in to No Peace, No Quiet's podcast. Remember to subscribe and follow for more content. As always, be careful who you follow, and have a great day, everybody.